listening to the CVS show on Phonic FM 106.8, bringing news from the voluntary and community sector in Exeter. Exeter CVS runs the local volunteer centre, offers affordable learning in IT, management and personal development, and gives membership support to charities and community groups across the city. Visit www.exetercvs.org.uk or call 01392 20 20 55 to find out more.
Listened to all over the world at www.phonic.fm. This is Exeter's Sound Alternative.
It's the CVS show on Thursday afternoon. Yes, it is Exeter's Sound Alternative, and we are heard all over the world. We've even had emails during the show from people in Australia who are up in the middle of the night doing art and stuff. But today's show is about SAFE, and I'm welcoming Sarah Richards from SAFE Charity. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, John.
SAFE, tell us what SAFE stands for, because people might not have heard it before.
Sure. So SAFE stands for Stop Abuse for Everyone. Mm-hmm. And we're a small local charity based in Exeter. We cover Exeter, East and Mid Devon. And for 40 years we've been working to end domestic violence. Uh-huh. So we work with victims and their families who've been affected by domestic violence and abuse. Okay, that kind of wraps it up, really. All in one quick sentence.
And it did change names a few years ago, because it was originally called Women's Refuge.
It was, yeah. Well, when we started, we were part of the National Women's Aid Network. So we were
Women's
called,
Aid,
that's it. Yeah. And Women's Aid is still going strong. Mm-hmm. And they, just as a little aside, I don't know if any of you have been here listening to The Archers on BBC Radio 4.
Well, I know people have. There's quite a story in that, isn't there?
Quite a story in that. And Women's Aid have been really instrumental in making sure that that story properly represents what happens to people. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Women's Aid is still going very strong. They're very strong in terms of campaigning. We're still part of their network. But because we felt that Exeter Women's Aid didn't really reflect that we wanted to work with everyone, we changed our name to SAFE to really express that we work with anyone and everyone who is affected by domestic abuse.
It's a really good name, actually, SAFE, because of as an acronym it works perfectly. And I know from looking through the stuff that you've been doing over the last couple of years that you've got stuff that specialises for men, for sort of young people.
Yes, we absolutely do.
Covering everybody, really.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, the fact that we're a charity means that we've been hit, in the way many charities have in terms of austerity and, financial constraints. Yeah. So we used to have a boys and young men's worker who works solely with boys and young men who are experiencing difficulties, having experienced domestic abuse. We're just putting in a bid to hope to get that project back up and running because it is so valuable. We do an awful lot of work with children in schools, a lot of awareness raising in schools and colleges, because sadly domestic abuse knows no barriers and affects people of all ages, all races and genders, all social status, all geographies. So it's something that is throughout society, and so we want to make sure that we reach out to anyone who's experiencing difficulties. Yeah, so people can't just assume that it's something that happens in deprived areas. It's everywhere in all levels of society. Absolutely, and and I think it's easy for people to think that it's not something that happens in their community, because very often part of the reason it persists is the silence around it, the fact that it happens in a home between intimate partners or family members, and people are very reluctant to talk about it, very reluctant to admit that this is happening to them, because it's a very complex issue. One of the things we hear a lot from people is, well, why don't they just leave? But actually it's a far more complex thing. If your family relationships are tied up, if you have children, very often partners work together, so if you leave, you stand, or it appears as if you're losing everything. So it's a very, very difficult thing for people to come forward and talk about. So somewhere like SAFE, we are specialists in this area. We understand how difficult it is for people, and we try and deal with people in a very sensitive and confidential manner, without trying to make people necessarily do things they don't want to do. That's it. So you're not going to say to someone, you've got to leave now. Absolutely not. No, we've got a range of services. So we've just setting up a counselling service for people. So counselling is very difficult to get hold of. It's a free counselling service. Oh, brilliant. So we hope that's going to help people to talk, about what they've experienced or what they're currently experiencing. We also run a service called Finding Your Voice, which is run exclusively by fully trained volunteers, and we offer one-to-one support to people around a lot of issues. So very often when people come out of abusive relationships, they've had to move home, they've had to move to an area they don't know, maybe their finances are in a bit of a mess, they've lost their jobs, things like that. So our volunteers are highly trained, and they will help people to identify the issues in their lives and how to move forward with those issues. So it's very much an empowering and enabling service, but it gives you someone to talk to, and someone who's completely neutral, who's not going to judge you, who can help you through the difficult aftermath of being in a relationship that's abusive.
Okay, that is a fantastic service. I mean, if somebody's listening and they think, actually, I think I could do with talking to somebody, then is there an initial step just to look the number up and just give a call and just start? That's the first
Absolutely,
move.
Yeah. Give us a ring. I can give you our number. It's 030 30 30 0112.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of an odd number, but so that's our main switchboard number. Leave a message and we will get back to you. Or if you don't feel that you're able to talk to someone and you'd rather email, if you email info@safe-services.org.uk, then someone will get back to you.
Brilliant. Okay. I just wanted to add with the numbers, those 03 numbers are really good, because what they do is they come under whatever package you've got. They act like a landline number.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you don't have to think, I'm calling from my mobile. Is it going to be like cost me loads and loads or anything? It'll come under whatever normal package you've got, as though you were calling like next door neighbour or something.
Exactly. So it's much more affordable. Yeah, because obviously we've got to think about those sorts of things. You know,
of course,
phone charges can be really. Can mean that someone won't make a call.
And like you were saying earlier on about finances, I mean, for people to get out of a really sort of dangerous situation, sometimes the barriers are huge. You know, they've got to kind of abandon so many things that they're actually complicatedly woven into their lives.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's where you guys come in with that kind of support strategy, help with resources.
Yeah, we absolutely do, and we can support people beyond the initial leaving. Another important part of our work is the work that our children and families team do. So they'll work with the non-abusive parent and the children to rebuild that relationship, because very often part of what happens in an abusive relationship is that the abusive partner will try and dismantle the relationship between the non-abusive parent and the child and use all sorts of tactics. And if a child has experienced domestic abuse, then they're going to have all sorts of issues, emotional issues around how they relate to their abusive parent and their non-abusive parent. This is why we find, sadly, statistically, even though there are lots of male victims who we do work with, the majority of victims are women, and the majority of perpetrators are men. So for boys and young men growing up seeing their fathers being abusive to their mothers, it can be very confusing, because how can they identify with that male role model when they may not agree with what that male role model is doing? So we help young people to work through those feelings with a range of things, really. It can be through play, it can be through art, it can be through sport, it can be through just talking. Whatever that child and young person wants to do, then we can facilitate that.
That's a brilliant thing to do, because I mean, it's so sad for kids going through that situation, or for everybody really, but having to kind of grow up with that going on in their lives. Another thing that I don't think people think of is a friend of mine a few years ago was working with the RSPCA, and they were setting up a scheme whereby if somebody had to leave the domestic situation, then their pet could be taken and have sort of respites.
That is still up and running. It's run by the RSPCA. I think it's got
a special name, isn't it?
The Cinnamon Trust, I think
they
it's
might
called.
be involved.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know the name exactly, but you're absolutely right, because that's another thing to think about. If someone needs to leave and they need to go into council accommodation, temporary accommodation, need to rent a room somewhere, very often landlords will say no pets. Do you leave your beloved pet with someone who you can't trust to look after them properly? Probably not. So that would probably be a thing which means that you stay.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are all sorts of organisations available which help with that peripheral stuff as well. So for example, if someone was to phone us with that issue, we'd be able to signpost them in the right direction and get assistance with that sort of thing. Because when you work in a field, you often know of organisations that exist when if you don't work in that field, you don't know.
Yeah,
quite
exactly.
rightly. You know, how would you know?
Yeah.
So we have a lot of information at hand, which we can help people with.
That's brilliant. Is it getting worse, Sarah? Is there just more and more need for the service because things are just getting bad out there?
It's really interesting, and that's a question that people ask often, and there's not an easy answer. What I would say is the demand is definitely not going down.
Right.
We are seeing lots and lots of women, men, children who are affected by this issue. I think that people are maybe feel more comfortable at reporting. The police are definitely far more responsive than they used to be. So the police are trained to a higher degree than they used to be in order to respond positively to people who phone. 2 women a week in this country are still murdered by their intimate partners.
Oh my God.
I know, it's a huge statistic, and people just don't realise, and part of that is because of the way that these murders are reported. So they're not reported as domestic abuse, even though if you look at it, it's a husband or an ex-boyfriend or a boyfriend who has committed the murder. Sadly, there was a woman in Exeter recently who was murdered by her partner. So I think the problem is definitely not going down. The National Crime Survey for the UK reported that one of the crimes that is on the increase is violence against women and girls. So we know that this is a growing problem, and it's a worldwide problem.
Yeah.
But we can do something about it. You in your locality can do something about it by volunteering for someone like SAFE.
Yeah.
You know, or donating to someone like SAFE, because we're a charity that exists purely on grant funding and donations, so we don't get any government funding at the moment. But we work... I haven't got the statistics on me, and I should have.
Don't worry.
But we work with loads of people.
It is a lot of people, isn't it?
It is a lot of people, yeah. We also run a great educational programme called Pattern Change.
Yeah.
And it's group work for women. And it's 14 weeks worth of group work. So every week a group of women come together and we work on self-esteem, on confidence building, on recognising the signs so that women can be in control of their relationships and not kind of fall into patterns which are detrimental.
I think that's important because people quite often use the phrase domestic violence, and then violence automatically makes you think of someone actually being physically beaten.
Yeah.
But a lot of domestic abuse is people just being manipulated and controlled. And
it's really interesting that you say that, because in 2015 a new law was enacted around a thing called coercive control. And for us that was really positive, because we felt that finally it was recognised that domestic abuse isn't just about violence. It's about controlling behaviour. It's about one person having power and control over another in an unreasonable way. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. Often people feel that they can't report it and they can't do anything about it because they've never hit me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that you have, you know, your free will is taken away because someone else's will is stronger and greater than yours, and that's not okay.
No, I remember talking to somebody many years ago about this, and they said that the person hadn't hit them, and they said, but when they do, then that's when I leave. And I think, well, two things can happen there. Either you're going to stay in a controlling relationship, or maybe subconsciously you'll provoke something that will then allow you to leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how complicated and stressful is that life? You know, it's not right at all, is it?
No. I mean, abuse can take many different forms. You know, it can be financial abuse, for example, one person withholding all the money and not allowing the other person to spend it in the way they want, but in a kind of very, you know, controlling and detrimental way. Yeah. As you say, it can be emotional and physical abuse, mental abuse. So it takes many different forms, and it's important that all those forms are recognised and given validity, because to suffer them is awful.
Yeah, it shouldn't be happening. So the workshop, the group workshop, is that something that anybody who feels they need to join it can join?
Absolutely. You can self-refer, or if you're working with other professionals, for example, if you have a mental health professional, or you're working with a social worker, you can ask them to refer you to it. But yes, again, just email us or give us a ring. We would do a risk assessment to see, how safe it is for you to do that, but we also do a needs assessment to see whether or not this is suitable. Because there are other services which may be more suitable. So, as I say, we have a range of things which we're able to offer people in order to move on.
It sounds like an absolutely amazing service. Importantly, I'm going to have some music, and then we're going to talk about how people can actually get involved.
The CVS Show on Phonic FM. Find out more about community and voluntary work in Exeter at www.exetercvs.org.uk. Visit us weekdays 9:30 to 4:30 on King William Street, or call 01392 20 20 55.
It's the CVS Show, and this afternoon I've been chatting to Sarah from Safe Charity. And Sarah, while the music was on, we were just chatting about sometimes that people don't realise that they are an abuser or a controller in some way until it's highlighted in some way, and that was the storyline that is on the Archers, and the guy that wrote it came along to the Women's Aid Conference.
He did, yeah. The Women's Aid Conference this year, because Women's Aid have been so much part of making sure that the storyline was authentic, the writer came along to speak to us all, and it was really interesting because he said he felt that this storyline between Rob and Helen had a massive response from people, not only victims who were calling, recognising their experience, but also perpetrators who were calling and saying, oh my God, my behaviour is just like Rob Titchener's, and I didn't realise that what I was doing was abusive. So it was a real sort of revelatory moment for some people when they realised that maybe some of the old values they'd had, or maybe the way they'd seen their dad treat their mum, which was quite controlling and old-fashioned, actually isn't acceptable today.
And hopefully that people like that will come through and get some help in their behaviour.
Definitely, yes,
And there is a conference coming up for men, or about men and their behaviour.
It's about men, we'll be putting the details on our website, and I'll also give you the details nearer the time, but it's at the end of November, and it's called A Call to Men. So we're teaming up with an organisation who want to challenge the stereotypes around masculinity. So whereas women feel very stereotyped, men can too, and there's lots of expectations around men's behaviour that men may not be happy with. So it's a way to call out to men and boys about challenging some of those stereotypes.
Okay, that'd be really interesting actually. And also sort of hopefully the sporting world will get involved in actually kind of promoting how people are being treated and how attitudes need to change and that kind of thing. So it's trying to get a bit more equality out there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, sadly, some research has shown that during major sporting events like the Rugby World Cup or Football World Cup, that violence against women does increase at those times. I think it's probably very complex. You can draw all sorts of conclusions, but it is definitely something to be for all everyone to be aware of.
So it is about sort of men's behaviour. They see as traditional masculine behaviour, and what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, it goes out the window a bit, so it needs to be looked at.
Absolutely, and people can get very, very emotional around, it means an awful lot. Sporting events mean an awful lot to people. Throw that in there with a load of drink and all sorts of things can happen to people which under normal circumstances, emotions might not have been that heightened.
Exactly. And the talks that you guys do in schools, does that often offer an opportunity for children to come forward as well and say, actually, there's a problem at home and I need to talk to somebody?
Yes, it does. We've done quite a bit in colleges, because again we recognise that there's a lot of hidden abuse within teen relationships. Especially with sort of the rise of social media and the way people communicate with phones and texts and emails and stuff, it can often be quite abusive, and people don't know what to do about it. So again, we're able to talk to young people about their relationships and how they feel about them and how to deal with things which they're not comfortable with.
It's fantastic that all this is available for people out there, but in order for it to be available, you need a few more hands on deck, really, don't you?
Oh, we certainly do, yeah. Volunteers are core to what we do. They supplement everything we do, and we value them massively. So at the moment we've got a big recruitment drive on. There are lots of opportunities available for volunteers, and we're looking for men and women age 18 plus. Because of the sensitive nature of some of the stuff we do, then people need to be 18 to come and join us. We give extensive training to our volunteers, and they can also get a qualification from the training we do. So we run accredited training. But there are lots of opportunities available, whether that's working one-to-one with victims or children, so in our children and families team, in our Finding Your Voice service, or we also need loads of help with things like fundraising and events, or if people are particular whizzes at social media or marketing. We're a tiny charity, and we spend all of our time doing the service delivery, so we're rubbish at keeping our Facebook page up to date, we're rubbish at promoting ourselves. So if there are any social media whizzes out there who want to come and help us raise the profile of SAFE and get the message out there, then we'd be more than happy to speak to you.
That's a really good call, actually, because there are people who love doing that.
Yeah.
So come and do it.
Like me.
I know. I think we did get a good response when we did that for Extra Pound, because they wanted some social media whizzes, and that went down quite well. So it's a real kind of broad spectrum of things. People are just coming along to sort of help out a bit.
Absolutely.
In-office IT things. Particularly important, I think, is, like you said, the fundraising and awareness raising. So that's something where you don't have to go through a full training and sort of working with people in an emotional sort of support way.
No, absolutely not. No. I mean, even if you didn't want to work with people face to face, we encourage our volunteers to go through the training because it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It gives people a real understanding of the intricacies behind domestic abuse, and I think if you come and volunteer for us, it's important to understand that. It's important to understand how these relationships develop and why people stay in them, and to bust some of the myths around domestic abuse. If someone's interested in coming and doing anything for us, please just get in touch. If you've got any ideas around fundraising, if you want to make us your charity of choice, we'd be really, really happy to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that is brilliant. And with that training, I mean, it'd be good if you did have the funding and the resources for that to be something that everybody gets to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially like college, like you say, college students, young people.
What we'd love to do, if we were in a position to, is offer this training to businesses, to organisations, because it's amazing how often when you speak to people, they know someone or have someone in their family who's been affected by this issue, and they've not known what to do.
No.
So we'd like to give people an understanding, and maybe allow them, or tool them up even, so that they can speak to the person who they think is affected in a sensitive and non-confrontational way, and just open the door for someone to divulge what's happening if they want to.
Yeah, exactly, because I mean, people don't know how to approach things, do they? And they get scared, so then they don't say anything.
Yeah.
We were talking, I think, while the music was on and we were off air, about what you do if you see something happening somewhere, and it's a 101 thing, unless it's looking, I mean, it could be 999 either.
It could be 999, but if you are suspicious that something is happening, if you see someone who you think is being treated badly, don't turn away. Phone 101. Just let someone know, because it could be that the police are absolutely aware of that address where you can hear things being thrown about and someone, being thrown against the wall. It could be that that's happened before. It could be that you'll be saving someone's life by doing something about it, by phoning 101, just alerting the police to what's going on.
Exactly, and what you don't want is to turn away, ignore, and then there's another murder, and that was something you maybe could have done something about. It's
absolutely,
it's a bit of a scary world. I mean, another statistic was that 2 women a week are murdered by their partners in this country. 100 people.
Yes.
Got to do something about it.
Absolutely. That's just in England and Wales. That's not in Scotland, and that's not in the rest of the world.
Oh, wow.
And some places are far more dangerous than others. So if we think that that's happening in our
we think of it as quite a safe country to be in. Yeah,
absolutely.
So volunteers are needed. And they can come along, they can have a chat with yourself, Sarah?
Yes, they can, yeah.
And sort of decide really how they want to be involved and what works best for them.
We're holding a recruitment day on the 18th. Yeah, we are.
Oh, good.
On the 18th of October. So if you're interested in coming along, it's on the afternoon of the 18th of October. Give me a ring or email me and book a place. So what we'll do is that's an opportunity to learn a bit more about the organisation, to meet the staff and other volunteers, to have a look at where we work and what we do. And if you want to take it forward, then we go through an interview process, an application form. All our volunteers are DBS checked. If people do have a criminal record, that doesn't necessarily debar them from volunteering for us. We'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. We ask for references, 2 references, and then there's the training program. And I know that sounds a bit onerous, but it isn't, honestly. It's just for our own. It just helps people understand what we're about, and we can understand what they're about, and we can make sure that we're a good match together. Yeah.
So really, everyone who's kind of coming into the organisation to volunteer will need to go through the training. Which is a really good thing. Is that the qualified training, or is that a different?
Well, you can choose whether or not you want to go for the qualification. So the training we run is currently a 5-week course. It's a day a week, and it's on understanding the causes and effects of domestic abuse. If you want to go for the qualification, all you do after the training is fill in a workbook, which we help you with. And if you pass, you end up with a level 2 in understanding the causes and effects of domestic abuse with the National Open College Network.
Brilliant.
So it can often be really great if someone's wanting to retrain and maybe volunteer in this field of work in the social care field in order to then move into work. It's a really valuable thing for them to have, because it just shows that you have that extra understanding of this particular area of work.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And if people want to get involved in the sense of fundraising, they want to do like a cake bake thing, or
that would be great.
A quiz or something, then that's great. Just get in touch with you and kind of get the official stamp to sort of raise money for the cause. We'd
be really, really grateful, because as I said, we're dependent on grants and donations. Anything that people can do to help us out, we're very, very grateful.
Brilliant. Well, we'll put all the information that we can on the website, and people can listen again to this as well. It's a fantastic cause, and we just hope to get as many volunteers for you as possible, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming and talking about it.
You're welcome. Thank you, John.
You've been listening to the CVS show on Phonic FM. The show was produced by John Stammers and Nick Kiss for Exeter CVS. For more information about any of the issues raised in this programme, visit www.exetercvs.org.uk, email cvs@exetercvs.org.uk, call 01392 2020 55, or visit us weekdays 9:30 to 4:30 on King William Street. Exeter CVS is a registered charity supporting the community and voluntary sector in Exeter.